Happy Friday and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for February 28th, 2025, the 9th Friday of the year, the final day of the second month of the year already. And for Muslims around the world, the holy month of Ramadan begins tonight. For the rest of us, it's weekend mode, right? I say that because the beginning of Ramadan means fasting. The president will be heading home to Palm Beach tonight, where the weather is absolutely amazing, especially compared to D.C., after yet another busy and likely historic day at the White House as he meets with Ukrainian President Zelensky, who is expected to sign a deal to share Ukraine's mineral resources with the United States. That's what the White House keeps saying, but Zelensky is also looking for security guarantees from the U.S., something Trump hasn't really committed to over the last several days. So much like yesterday and the day before with other world leaders, should be a very interesting day at the White House. That is the big headline, of course. But the Trump administration made history before the sun even came up this morning, as a jet with 29 Mexican drug cartel members landed in New York, as President Trump and Secretary of State Rubio secured their extradition to the United States for prosecution, the most extraditions in one day in the history of Mexico. And among the 29, a notorious drug lord who's been wanted for killing an American DEA agent 40 years ago. This will be news today as well. Yesterday, Trump hosted Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of UK and Northern Ireland, at the White House. He also had a visit with Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker, who last year, you may remember, was attacked in the media for being a devout Christian and a Trump supporter. We'll get to all of that. In Wednesday's cabinet meeting, you heard the president talk about inflation still being high and needing to bring down prices. There was inflation news this morning. But first, what everyone has been sort of low-key talking about the past few days, maybe not even low-key, but especially on social media, the Jeffrey Epstein files. This is Greg Kelly.
So the Epstein files, the first chunk, have finally dropped. Thank you, President Trump. Thank you, Attorney General Pam Bondi. Thanks goes to the FBI Director Kash Patel, everybody who voted for Donald Trump. So much about this guy, what he was up to, misunderstood, not understood at all, unknown. And how about how he died? We all know, right? Although some people out there think he's still alive. Maybe we'll find out the answers, the true answers, in this, the first chunk of the Epstein files that dropped today. I don't think it's a game changer yet. It looks like our government may have withheld even more documents from the Attorney General and the FBI Director. I've been through as much of this as I can. There's an old phone book from the 1990s. A lot of names are in that thing, okay? That's years before Jeffrey Epstein ever got in trouble. And the rest of it is kind of a bust. Take a look at this, for example. This is, I don't know, a sheet out of a spiral notebook. It's all redacted. Never different times, and then it just goes away. There's a lot of redactions, a lot of that stuff. There's a lot of this stuff, codes and numbers that don't seem to mean much of anything. He set up a MySpace account at one point. And this, it's redacted. Was it a ticket from the Palm Beach Police Department? Can you see it? It's just, it's not all that, folks. It's just not all that.
Well, obviously, you can't see it. It's some kind of police department stamp from the Palm Beach Police Department, where Epstein had been arrested. He had a big mansion in Palm Beach where many of the alleged crimes took place. Transcripts from 2006 show that the prosecutors knew. It doesn't say they believed or they thought. This is all available for you to see. It says they knew Epstein was paying teenage girls for sex, yet he was only charged with a single charge of soliciting prostitution. This is from CBS 12 in West Palm Beach in 2006. Multiple victims described in graphic detail how Epstein recruited and sexually assaulted them at his home. Only 2 years later, in 2008, Epstein got what has been described as a sweetheart deal in pleading guilty to 2 charges of soliciting prostitution. Back to Greg Kelly.
How much time did he get? Like a couple of months in weekend jail. Weekend jail. That's it. How did he get such a sweetheart deal? And why is it, even after the guy goes down for hanging around with girls, right, underage, and doing stuff with them, why does he retain so many friendships post-conviction? You know who visited him during I think it was the Obama administration? This guy. His name is William Burns. No. We jumped ahead of ourselves, folks. We did a little bit, but that's okay. Let's tell you. All right. There's William Burns. William Burns is the Central Intelligence Agency director, was under Joe Biden, but you know what? Forget that guy. Forgive me. Let's go back to those 2 pictures of the middle-aged guy getting the massage. Yep. That's Bill Clinton, everybody. Bill Clinton. Now, in Bill Clinton's defense, this was before Epstein went down. This is September of 2002. And the girl giving him a massage at some airport somewhere is 22 years of age. All right? So do we give Bill Clinton a pass for hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein before the conviction? I think you can make that case. I do, actually. But you can't make that case for the guy I showed you a few moments ago. The CIA director, Burns, under Joe Biden. He was Deputy Secretary of State, I believe, under Obama. And the guy visits Jeffrey Epstein at his house. Why would he do that? recently, relatively recently, and he admitted it. The Wall Street Journal broke the story. They first met in Washington, and then Mr. Burns visited Epstein's townhouse in Manhattan. Epstein offered general advice on the transition to the private sector, according to the CIA spokesperson. The director did not know anything about him. Typical CIA, right? They know nothing. Mr. Burns met with Epstein as he was preparing to leave government service. Of course you check in with a guy who's, right? Of course you do, if you're the CIA director. Well, that is pretty crazy. And it's also pretty crazy that these guys were hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein post-conviction. Who are these guys? Well, they're rich guys, including a very rich and influential person, Bill Gates, who's buying farmland and doing all kinds of things with vaccines, right? That's post-conviction. Why would they do that? I mean, there are certain people you really should keep your distance from, right? Child molesters. I think it's okay to shun them a little bit. Everybody has a future, and I think anybody can be rehabilitated, but a lot of people were giving this guy too much of the benefit of the doubt, don't you think? Now, it's true. Donald Trump's name pops up in this thing. Back in the 1990s, he was in Jeffrey Epstein's phone book like everybody. The guy was in New York. Everybody knew him, and he was also in Palm Beach. Let me see here. We have that video. Yeah, check this out. The fake news acts like this is a smoking gun. Here he is socializing with Jeffrey Epstein at Mar-a-Lago. And yeah, this did happen.
Trump is seen talking to Epstein and another man as women are dancing in front of them. Trump alternates between dancing and pointing out women to Epstein and the other man and telling Epstein about the cameras. Though exactly what they say is difficult to understand as they discuss the women and their appearances.
Oh my God, they were discussing the appearances of women. Who does that? Anyway, you see Trump dancing a little bit, the dance we know. This was in 1992, 13 years before Epstein went down for, the sordid behavior. And he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago at one point. Donald Trump is not implicated in any of this stuff. He had Jeffrey Epstein, got a sense that he was a bad guy, and kept his distance from him.
Greg Kelly is the host of Greg Kelly Reports, 9 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax, 9 p.m. Not only was that in 1992, it was at Mar-a-Lago. Think about it. A lot of people that own mansions in Palm Beach, and even some that don't. I mean, a lot of people in Palm Beach had been to parties at Mar-a-Lago, which is a country club, keep in mind. A private country club. It's a resort. It's Donald Trump's home now, but it's a country club. And women were dancing. It would have been a lot more telling, I think, if Trump were at Epstein's mansion, where a party was going on, or on Epstein Island, like some others. More from Rob Schmitt.
All right, so phase one of the Epstein files release was a flop. I think we can see that now. 200 pages, mostly redacted names, flight logs, phone numbers, all around the sex trafficking scandal of Jeffrey Epstein. There was no real smoking gun today. Not nearly the full tranche of records that Pam Bondi indicated that we would see today. The AG now says the FBI is withholding the goods, perhaps protecting the accused. In a letter to the FBI director, Kash Patel, Bondi ordered all Epstein-related content to be delivered to her by 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow, and directed Patel to investigate the Southern District of New York as well, which he says is withholding thousands of more files. Eric Eggers is the vice president of the Government Accountability Institute and has heavily investigated the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, and he joins us now. What do you think happened today? I heard Pam Bondi say last night that she thought we'd be shocked by this, and then it all falls flat. This is not what people expect from this administration.
It's not what people expect, and people are expressing disappointment, and rightfully so. But I do think it's important to understand the fact that we're even having this conversation speaks to the shift that we've seen in terms of the commitment to transparency on behalf of the Trump administration. I saw some Democrats criticizing Pam Bondi for not releasing things earlier, which I thought was quite laughable, considering the Biden administration sat on these documents for 4 years. Yeah. It wouldn't be the first time the FBI has undermined something the Trump administration was trying to do. It wouldn't be the first time the Southern District of New York office is trying to undermine what they're trying to do. And I think the good news is that, look, they're being honest. This isn't what what they thought it would be. They're asking for a full investigation of the FBI and the agents that have kept this information, if that's what happened from Kash Patel.
Yeah.
And so I think we'll see what happens by 8 a.m. tomorrow.
Yeah, and Kash Patel just tweeted like 30 minutes ago. He just tweeted out, this is a new FBI. There's not going to be any more secret documents. He's promising transparency in a tweet that clearly has to do with what we've seen today and clearly the backlash that has come to it. What do you think is going on? Like, are they? Is it just that? Are they terrified of some of the names that are on that list? Are there very powerful people that are controlling this? I mean, how in the hell is this happening?
So one of my favorite phrases is never mistake incompetence for conspiracy. And so while it's possible that the Epstein files may in fact involve some conspiracy, and clearly we believe there's some very powerful people that are involved in this and that there are names that come to the highest level of society, both globally and in the United States, I think it's also quite possible that, look, these are paper records and these have been scattered around somewhere. Some of them might still be in Joe Biden's garage. So I think that it's going to take them a little while. We know that there's been an all-out effort on behalf of the deep state to obfuscate and try to counter what the Trump administration has tried to do at every turn. And so I think it's, just look, this is step one. It is, in Pam Bondi's words, phase one of what they hope to find. I do think if there's one thing to be kind of curious about, and Rob, I think you're touching on this, is the disconnect between what Pam Bondi suggested we would see and what we actually saw. So that raises some concerns, but I think so far I'm willing to give Pam Bondi and specifically Kash Patel the benefit of the doubt. And I think the American people will too, but we'll see what happens the rest of this week.
Eric Eggers, Vice President of the Government Accountability Institute, on Rob Schmitt Tonight. The rest of this week is today. If Kash Patel comes up with anything significant, might we see a Friday news dump, or will they work on this through the weekend and maybe, hopefully, have more information in a bigger news event than just dumping it tonight? Again, the good news is this is just the beginning, and it is not going to end well for some people. As President Trump meets with Zelensky today, this is what he said about it yesterday in the bilateral news conference with the UK Prime Minister.
Okay, please. Mr. President, could you be persuaded as part of a peace settlement in Ukraine to provide air cover, a backstop security position to the contributions that Europe might make as well?
Well, so President Zelensky is coming to see me on Friday morning, and we're going to be signing really a very important agreement for both sides because it's really going to get us into that country. We'll be working there. We'll have a lot of people working there. And so in that sense, it's very good. It's a backstop, you could say. I don't think anybody's going to play around if we're there with a lot of workers and having to do with rare earths and other things, which we need for our country. And we appreciate it very much. And I look forward to seeing him. We'll be talking about it, and we'll also be talking about that today with the Prime Minister.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, we've already indicated that we'll play our full part in making sure that any deal, if there is one, and I hope there is, and I think this is a historic moment to make sure it's a lasting deal, and we're about to have a discussion about how we can make that work.
But I have to say this, as I said yesterday, you're talking about a peacekeeping force. We have to make a deal first. Right now, we don't have a deal. We have Russia, we have Ukraine. I think we're very well advanced. I think Russia has been acting very well. We have Representatives Steve Witkoff and Scott and Marco and JD. We're all involved, every one of us, and a lot more. But I think we're very well advanced on a deal, but we have not made a deal yet. So I don't like to talk about peacekeeping until we have a deal. I like to get things done. I don't want to give it the bad luck sign. We don't want to do that.
You heard the UK Prime Minister say, we've already indicated that we will play our full part in the deal. Next question.
Yeah, please.
Mr. President, you obviously can do business with our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. You said yesterday that the EU was constructed to screw the US when it comes to trade. What can our Prime Minister say to you to persuade you not to impose tariffs on the United Kingdom?
Yeah, did I use the word that you said, that bad word?
I think so.
Well, I think that the EU, I've had problems with the EU because, and we're not talking about, we happen to have a great relationship with you, but we did have, and we do have problems with the EU because they've tariffed us. They do it in the form of a VAT tax, which is about 20%, and many other taxes. They sue our companies. They sued Apple got 16 or 17 billion dollars, which was, I think, totally a ridiculous decision. And they're suing Google for a lot of money. They're suing a lot of other companies, and we don't like the way they're treating our people now. We don't like the way they're treating our companies. They sell us cars. We don't sell them cars. They don't take our cars. They don't take much of our agriculture. And we have a deficit with them of about $350 billion. So I wouldn't say it's been such a great relationship personally, but other people did because it's politically correct to say that it's been good, but it hasn't been good.
Other people will say what's politically correct, but not Trump, and Starmer extended an invitation to President Trump.
This is a letter from His Majesty the King. It's an invitation for a second state visit. This is really special. This has never happened before. This is unprecedented. And I think that just symbolises the strength of the relationship between us. So this is a very special letter. I think the last state visit was a tremendous success.
It was.
His Majesty the King wants to make this even better than that. So this is truly historic, an unprecedented second state visit, and he wants to talk that through with you.
And that says at Windsor. That's
Yes.
really something.
Yes. What I haven't got yet is your answer. I do need to.
The answer is yes. On behalf of our wonderful First Lady, Melania, and myself, the answer is yes, and we look forward to being there and honoring the King and honoring really your country. Your country is a fantastic country, and it'll be our honor to be there. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. I shall happily take that back to His Majesty.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
King Charles III extending an unprecedented second state visit to President Trump and the First Lady. As Democrats and mainstream media continue to rail against the Department of Government Efficiency saving us money, the new EPA administrator, former New York Congressman Lee Zeldin, very popular in New York, is exposing what he called Biden's green energy scheme.
Talk about how you're going to run this agency with a 65% cut. How is that possible?
In 2024, EPA spent tens of billions of dollars. In 2025, we need to be spending tens of billions of less dollars. My message to Congress is don't give the EPA all of the money that you gave the EPA in 2024. I don't want it. We don't need it. The American taxpayer needs it. That's our message to Congress. I have zero tolerance for any waste and abuse, and I want EPA to be operating as efficiently as possible. That means looking at grants and contracts, travel expenditures, real estate footprint, and staff too. We're looking at everything.
Yeah. You started this investigation after this video came out that showed this guy talking about how they're throwing gold bars off the Titanic and all this money that they had just sent out right at the very end there just to get it to people, and all of the waste, the disgusting behavior of government. And then the $2 billion that went to this group attached to Stacey Abrams. I mean, how sinister does that money look?
Self-dealing, conflicts of interest, a lack of qualifications, and on top of it, it was done in a way where EPA was deliberately tying its hand behind its back to limit oversight. Wow. What you just referenced with regards to that Stacey Abrams-linked NGO, as you pointed out, brand new NGO that only received $100 in 2023, and then they get $2 billion in 2024? I read the grant agreement on page 7. It gives the NGO 90 days to complete a training called How to Develop a Budget. If they need to complete a training called How to Develop a Budget, how do you give them $2 billion? I'll give you another example. The director of this fund, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, gave his former employer $5 billion. And you just pointed out someone else who was serving on the White House Environmental Justice Council, giving an entity that she's serving CEO at $20 million, even though over the course of the prior 3 years, they only received $2 or $3 million. I think that this is something that the entire scheme should be looked at and investigated as criminal.
This feels like DOJ stuff. This feels very criminal. This feels like they're just taking our money and doing with it whatever they please. It's just a huge slush fund for whatever they want to toss money to, and a lot of people I can't imagine how much of that is embezzled in some way, and what kind of lifestyle the people that work for these NGOs are living when they're getting $2 billion for a brand new. I mean, it's like this is, and we just think this is probably ubiquitous throughout the entire government. How terrifying that is. That is just awful.
Rob Schmitt with Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Lee Zeldin on Newsmax. White House spokesperson Taylor Rogers clarified Trump's 65% reduction in workforce comments yesterday, saying that more workforce cuts will continue alongside spending cuts. Couldn't put a specific number on it. On Newsmax.com right now, the Social Security Administration is preparing to lay off at least 7,000 people from its workforce of 60,000. Now, and you remember they wanted to hire 85,000 more plus 60,000? This according to a person familiar with the plan who is not authorized to speak publicly. And according to a second person who is not authorized to speak publicly, the cuts could be as high as 50% at the Department of Social Security. Whatever it is, you know cuts are coming, right? Linda McMahon is now one step closer to being confirmed as Education Secretary. The full Senate advanced McMahon's nomination in a 51-47 vote yesterday, setting her up now for a final confirmation vote that'll happen on Monday. No surprise, the vote was on party lines, with no Democrats voting for her.
Now, what we saw from Mitch McConnell in voting against Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, and RFK was just flat out wrong. You should expect a senator from Kentucky to vote for those nominees to advance the America First agenda. If I was in the Senate, I would have voted for those nominees because I recognize it reflects your values and it supports that agenda.
So that is Daniel Cameron, the Kentucky Senate candidate now running for Senator Mitch McConnell's U.S. Senate seat.
McConnell is bringing his 4-decade Senate career to a close, announcing he is not seeking re-election in 2026, opening the pathway there. Republican Kentucky Senate candidate and former Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron is joining us. You just saw him on video. Good to see you, Mr. Cameron. Thanks for joining us. It's always good to see you. So we just heard you talk there about Mitch McConnell, calling him out for no votes on the cabinet picks by President Trump. Talk to us about why you decided to get out in front of this and maybe make this choice to move forward with your candidacy.
Well, look, I think it's important for your viewers and the voters here in Kentucky to know where I stand on particular issues. And I've said, whether it was speaking at the Republican National Convention in 2020 for President Trump then, or endorsing him for re-election in his most recent bid, or standing for the America First agenda, I've always had his back. And I wanted Kentuckians to know that I'm going to support the America First agenda as the next senator of Kentucky. I think it's an important thing for folks to know, and wanted to make that clear to everyone who's watching and paying attention to this race.
Yeah, it's different, right? Because we've heard of sort of the GOP establishment, Republicans, perhaps Mitch McConnell would fall into that category here. But MAGA is relatively new to the scene. And you yourself have even mentioned McConnell as a big role in your career path, acknowledging him in your acceptance speech as Attorney General of the state of Kentucky, saying at the time the senator had changed the trajectory of your life. But now we're seeing this sort of differing viewpoint. Can you explain maybe to the viewer why you've come to where you are today?
Well, look, as I've often said, that I hope my candidacy represents a merger of a lot of different lanes, whether you find yourself as a Trump MAGA Republican, whether you find yourself as a libertarian Republican, a constitutionalist. I think I can bring the party together. And that's ultimately what my candidacy represents, someone who can articulate the values and principles of the America First agenda, do it in a way that isn't disparaging of a person or their character, but talks about differences in policy. And I will continue to do that. I think that, again, it's important for the voters to know. But I've got a track record. Look, I'm somebody who was the first Attorney General in the nation to oppose ESG and say that if you are a board member of a pension here in Kentucky, you got to look out for the firefighters, police officers, and teachers rather than ESG. I've been a vocal opponent of DEI. I've preserved our constitutional rights here in Kentucky. And that's what I want to bring to the United States Senate, a new perspective looking forward, also making sure we're representing and supporting that America First agenda, securing our border, tackling inflation, looking for ways to advance cryptocurrency. I mean, these are issues that, Kentuckians care about, and I want to be on the forefront of helping lead and support President Trump in the United States Senate.
Kentucky Senate candidate Daniel Cameron on National Report with Sean Kreisman and Emma Rechenberg. Cameron, who was the state attorney, also ran for governor of Kentucky back in 2023, losing to incumbent Democrat Andy Beshear. If you look at Kentucky, it's kind of amazing that the governor is Andy Beshear, right? Well, not so much Andy Beshear, but that the governor is a Democrat. Like North Carolina, they had a Democrat, and then they voted in Josh Stein, the new North Carolina governor, another Democrat. And I know there are a lot of listeners to the podcast in North Carolina, and I know most of you, if not all of you, agree with me. So it's another big day at the White House with Ukrainian President Zelensky in what could be a huge economic windfall for the United States and a historic move for President Trump. And the first step in ending the war in Ukraine, which Trump said he would do on day one. The White House says the president also plans to sign an executive order making English the official language of the United States. You will hear a lot about that from the other side if it happens. And the Personal Consumption Expenditure Index, the Fed's favorite inflation gauge, was released this morning, showing inflation at 2.5%, which was in line with analyst expectations. It was 2.6% the previous month, excluding food and energy, which is a thing that they do, right? It rose 0.3% for the month and was 2.6% annually. The good news, though, personal incomes rose 0.9%, way more than the expectations of 0.4%. Stock markets, however, opened mixed to flat. The Dow was down a bit, the S&P and the NASDAQ up a bit. And there's still nothing new or concrete on the deaths of actor Gene Hackman and his wife, except that they were likely dead for a while before they were found on Thursday. And this whole thing is really bizarre to me. I was waiting all day yesterday. I was waiting for updates and to get, something concrete. I told you this time yesterday, they quickly said no foul play. Then later in the day, they said they can't rule out foul play. They also said they can't rule out murder or suicide. I mean, wouldn't there be some obvious signs of death, or are they just not telling us? And why not? Gunshots, stab wounds. They found some pills. Okay. Gene Hackman was in one room. His wife was in another room. Oh, there was a heater on the floor. I mean, they're not telling us anything 48 hours later. All right, be sure to keep up with all of the news and breaking developments throughout the day and the whole weekend on Newsmax N2 and at NEWSMAXDaily. It all begins each and every morning with Wake Up America. Don't forget Wake Up America Weekend Edition, Saturday and Sunday. Also Saturday and Sunday Report, America Right Now, Saturday and Sunday Agenda, The Savage Nation, and much more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Newsmax Daily podcast, or at least checking it out. Make sure you share it with everyone. Enjoy your weekend, doing whatever it is you love to do, and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.